let's move to the next step of the analysis in the logical framework approach to building capacity for resilience. It is the I'm somehow not awake these days, so it's the objectives analysis. Objective analysis is something else, subjective versus objective. This is the objectives analysis. The fourth step here is called objectives analysis and includes an evaluation of current risks based on the risk analysis from the situation analysis we just talked about, and an evaluation of current capacities for resilience based on the capacity analysis from the situation analysis, and the formulation of clear project objectives. In other words, it's time to go from the descriptive to the prescriptive in describing the preferred situation for the human environment system that we talked about before. It's also time to define the changes the capacity development project must generate to reach the preferred situation. So we have understood the current situation, we are defining a preferred situation, and then when we want to design programs and projects to reach the preferred situation. The evaluations of risk and capacity contributing to resilience include statements of the desired level of risk and the desired level of performance of functions for resilience, or at least the intention to reduce the current level of risk and increase the level of performance. That's the bare minimum for any situational change you want to do from, in going from current situation to a preferred state. The preferred state must have lower risks and function better as well in a functional performance sense that we discussed before. So the rationale of logical framework approach that we looked at before: current situation, projects, programs, etc., to get us to the preferred situation. We did the analysis here, and now we are looking at objectives analysis to design projects and programs. So explicitly describing such preferred situation makes the step between the current situation as described in the situation analysis and the formulation of objectives more transparent. This formulation of objectives involves articulating the overall goal, purposes, and expected results of the capacity development project or program in question. These three levels of objectives are hierarchical in the sense of a set of expected results together fulfilling a purpose, which in combination with other purposes entail meeting the overall goal. In other words, achieving the objectives at each level requires the achievement of all related objectives on the level below in the hierarchy. However, it's important to note that also the objectives hierarchy is likely to be full of other dependencies between objectives than the linear relationship between an overall goal and its related purposes and their expected results. So the tree is obviously got many branches and sub-branches in that sense. Acknowledging such dependencies is vital in designing a capacity development project or a program, since it is impossible to achieve any objective at all if not all other objectives that it depends on is equally addressed. So all the interdependencies and their feedbacks must be considered. The overall goal declares what long-term effects of the project program is intended to have, which is generally difficult to achieve in one isolated initiative and should instead be understood as the vision and direction of the program or project. For instance, an overall goal of a capacity development program for local mangrove rehabilitation could be the reduced consequences of coastal flooding on the lives and livelihoods of people in location X. Such overall goal is difficult to achieve within the time frame of the program as such, especially since the full effects of its activities may take years or even decades to materialize in the form of a barrier for strong winds, waves, erosion, and other human activities on land affecting the ecosystem as well. In addition, achieving an overall goal is also generally dependent on various external factors that the internal and external partners have little or no influence over. Hopefully they are not black swan events that just pop up, but they are in fact things that can be dealt with once they are on the horizon. Okay. The purposes of the project or program, on the other hand, describe its intended direct effects and should normally be achieved as an immediate consequence of the realization of the related expected results, or up to around 3 years after. So this timeline is kind of dependent on many details of the objectives themselves. The purposes of the project or program usually correspond to the focal point from the situational analysis. For example, a purpose of the 5-year mangrove rehabilitation program starting in 2014 could be 30% reduction of the yearly number of flooded days of the communities in location X by 2019. So there is a timeline, there is an objective, there is a metric, and so on. The most tangible level of objectives in the hierarchy is the expected result. The expected results of the project or program are direct, real, and concrete effects of its activities. That's the goal, that's what you're investing in. Expected results should typically be achieved immediately as the activities are implemented through a number of, though a number of activities are often required to achieve one particular expected result. For example, the expected result of 100% increase in the extent of mangrove coverage in location X by 2019 would entail various activities, from behavioral change activities from community members to stop cutting down existing mangroves, to training volunteers in nursing and planting new mangroves. So protect, restore, manage, and afforest mangroves. That's kind of the detail, so it's not that easy. Let's see, let's keep reading. When designing objectives, it has been suggested that they should be SMART. In other words, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. This is, as described earlier, not generally feasible for overall goals, but is not less vital for the project purposes and expected results. A specific objective means that it is precise in what it sets out to accomplish, in sharp contrast to a general objective that gives a broad direction. For an objective to be measurable, it must be possible to monitor and evaluate its attainment in quantitative or qualitative ways. An attainable objective means that it is realistic but challenging in relation to the capacities of the actors involved in the capacity development initiative, while a relevant objective means that it should matter to them. So those are details. However, all actors do not need to view every single objective as relevant to them in isolation, as the objectives are dependent on each other. In other words, for an object to be relevant, it must matter to the involved actors or be linked to objectives that do matter. This way, it's possible to design objectives that mobilize a wide range of actors from across various functional, administrative, and geographical borders. So not everybody is looking for the same thing, but the overall outcome is relevant for all of them. Finally, a time-bound objective means that it involves a set of time frame for achieving it. Setting such time frame for each objective is essential for monitoring and evaluation, as well as for generating a sense of urgency that motivates focus on action. Time-bound projects always have deliverables that must be delivered as planned on time. The objectives analysis is ideally done in the same goal-oriented project planning workshop as the concluding phase of the situation analysis presented earlier, especially as it is important that the same group of actors participates in both situation analysis and objectives analysis, since shared understanding of problems to address is fundamental for designing objectives that mobilize commitment and ownership among partners. The same workshop may also include an initial dialogue concerning activities and indicators, as well as a first identification of project risks and assumptions involved, which are presented here in the next box. However, the main focus of the goal-oriented project planning workshop is on the situation analysis and objectives analysis. The important aspects of the objectives analysis are summarized here in 9.5, Summary of Objectives Analysis. The objectives analysis can be summarized as the answer to 4 questions. You see the format this author uses. What is the desired level of risk and level of capacity to manage a risk and resilience? To manage risk and resilience, what is the goal? That is, what are the long-term effects of the project or program? What are the purposes? That is, what are the direct effects of the project or program? What are the expected results? That is, what are the direct effects of the activities of the program or the project? Okay, so explicitly describing such preferred situation makes the step between the current situation as described in the situation analysis and the formulation of objectives more transparent, so everybody knows what they are getting. This in terms of a preferred situation we are heading to. This formulation of objectives involves articulating the overall goal, purposes and expected results of the capacity development project or program in question. These 3 levels of objectives are hierarchical in the sense of a set of expected results together, fulfilling a purpose which in combination with other purposes entails meeting the overall goals. In other words, achieving the objectives at each level requires the achievement of all related objectives on the level below in the hierarchy. So you cannot go forward unless everything at that level and below has been met. However, it's important to note also that the objectives hierarchy is likely to be full of other dependencies between the objectives than the linear relationship between an overall goal, its related purposes, and their expected results. So they are all complicated in their interdependencies. Acknowledging such dependencies is vital in designing a capacity development project or program, since it is impossible to achieve any objective if not all other objectives that it depends on are equally addressed. Okay, so the overall goal declares what long-term effects the project program is intended to have, which is generally difficult to achieve in one isolated initiative and should instead be understood as the vision and direction of the project or program. For instance, an overall goal of capacity development program, I have already read this, for the local mangrove rehabilitation could be reduced consequences of coastal flooding on the lives and livelihoods of the people in location X. Such an overall goal is difficult to achieve within the time frame of the program as such. Okay, I think I have somehow gone back or repeated these things, so let me clarify those things and leave this podcast here, since we have made some points already. So let's come back and deal with this. Okay.